Hi, everybody. So I want to keep it brief with the permaculture because I know Marlo is talking about the principles. So I just give a brief introduction to permaculture. It means that it is permanent agriculture because our agriculture right now is not permanent. It's just one season, then everything gets taken out, destroyed, and they start in the next season again, usually in winter. Many farmers don't do much with their land. Let it just sit there. They don't even cover it with anything, mulch or so. The like here you see in Oceanside a lot. The soil is bare, exposed, and releases a lot of carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere when it is bare. So that's really not a good thing to do as a farmer. It's not a practice with nature. It's just against nature because they don't want to invest in it. So they save money. It's about the money more important than our atmosphere and our environment. So permaculture is a system that entirely commits itself to sustainable development practices. That's very important. And it does not apply only to agriculture. It can be applied to any industrial or business activity, even to your household. You can manage your household by following the principles of agriculture. And I know many of you do that already. And doing sustainable practices, avoiding plastic, recycling, and growing their own food. That's all in direction permaculture culture. It's it does provide tools so you can create healthy environment and energy efficient living, learning and working spaces. That's important too, especially learning spaces. So schools can, in my opinion, every school, every high school at least, should offer at least free will or even mandatory a class of permaculture. So every student knows about this when he goes into professional life. I think that would be really awesome if we pursue that and push our school boards towards introducing permaculture in the curriculum. That would be great. Um, so permaculture design is a functional design system. So it focuses on functions and it combines functions to a lot of good benefits. It satisfies all human and animal basic needs such as food, shelter, habit, energy, social context, and aesthetics. So think about farmers today. If you talk to a farmer, what do you do to improve your aesthetics of your land? He just looks at you with big eyes and says, I don't even know what that is. So permaculture takes care even of aesthetics and makes it look and be beautiful. So beauty and spreading beauty is part of permaculture. Um, and the one of the most important things is that permaculture takes care of the soil. It multiplies fertility of soil and nature and diversity. So it goes away from monocultures to polycultures, to a lot of species, which helps the wildlife again, it helps the insects, and benefits everybody. I know Marlo will talk about the principle of permaculture in her own slide, so I'm going to skip on those. There are two guys or people who lived in 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s in Australia. It's David Holmgreen and Bill Mollison, and they formulated in the late 70s the principles of permaculture and wrote this thick book. It's called the Handbook of Permaculture by those two people. So everybody who really wants to go into that should purchase that book. It's a little bit expensive, but it's like you do it only once in your life, so then you have it. Yeah, next slide. I did a little sketch today, and this reminds me of what like West Coast tomato growers does here. They are farming here in Eastern Oceanside and Bonsall area, and right now many of their lands are laying bare. They don't do anything with it, so it's exposed to wind, rain erosion, and they mainly create a dust bowl if they don't take care of it. So there should be an ordinance in the future from local governments and counties and state governments to to require that every landowner, private or business, doesn't matter, for nature doesn't matter, has to cover the land. You cannot leave soil uncovered. It's just really bad for environment. So this sketch shows you a little bit that they usually drive up the hill. So if it's like a slopey area like we have here in the Bonsall area, much more slopes than flat areas, they drive up with the plow up the hill and create channels down the hill with the gravity. So when it rains on those plowed channels, it promotes erosion and washes away the topsoil. Topsoil is only a foot or 2 feet at the most. Below there's no more life. And another thing I want to mention, a living soil has per cubic foot, about 200 billion organisms. Air doesn't have that and water doesn't have that. That's only available in soil. So I don't think that any of those farmers know anything about that. So maybe we can go there and educate them and let them know that the soil is the most condensed living space on this planet, just the upper 2 feet. So if we don't take care of those 2 feet, then we are going to be doomed and have big problems in the future. Our children and grandchildren don't find fertile soil anymore. There's no way to grow food anymore. So as you can see on this slide, let me go back one more time to the former slide. What happens here is that the tractor is compacting the soil, is polluting the air, is taking out all the crops, it's releasing carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases from the soil into the air, exposed to rain, sun, and wind erosion. So that's not a good practice. On the next slide, sketch, you see how it could be done differently with pretty simple measures. The only thing is you need to turn around the tractor and let it run along the contour lines on the same elevation lines. So the water gonna stay there, and you don't want to turn the soil too, because if you turn and plow soil, you kill mainly most of the microbiology. So all you do is there's a tool, it's called a deep plow. You can aerate your soil, loosen it up, and add oxygen to the deeper areas of the soil. And then you want to keep it mulched, so the tractor or the machine you use does not compact the soil as much. You can reduce compaction by 90% just with a layer of mulch. It's pretty amazing. So in this slide, you see that you plant, first you create the roads. That you see there's on the lower third of the sketch, there are sections like roads, swale, food forests, swale, annual crops, roads, swale, and so on. So that's a sequence of zones you have on your land. And with this, you avoid 100% runoff. So there's no more erosion from water. It doesn't matter how heavy it rains. And everybody knows that rain gonna come more infrequent, but much, much harder because of the higher temperatures, the ocean emits much more moisture into the atmosphere, and it collects in much more concentrated areas and creates, and we have that already, heavy flooding in some areas, and other areas stay dry. So it's very much more unbalanced and out of whack. So we have to get prepared for that, for heavy rainfalls, and avoid the erosion of our topsoils. And you do that by building those swales every 30, 40, 50 feet, depends on the whole design, what kind of crop you have, and then build rows of trees along those swales. So the trees have the function, first be a windbreak, so your crop is protected from high winds because the wind speeds increase too. Then it creates shade, so it cools down the area, so you don't have so much water evaporation anymore, and it creates a better microclimate in that spot where you want to grow your crop, and it holds the soil in place. That's number 3, the advantage. The roots of a tree are much better than anything else to keep soil in place. And number 4, of many more advantages, is that it sequesters carbon dioxide into the soil. And the amounts of carbon dioxide of just one 30-year-old tree he puts into the soil is unknown to now. But we know it can be a lot because those trees do that 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So they do that even at nighttime. So it's very important to work with the trees in the agriculture. It's good that we think about preserving the open spaces and the parks and the wildlife, but the area in the United States which is used by agriculture is much, much, much bigger. And if you cut all the plants down and leave the soil exposed, you are making it so much heavier or difficult for Earth to breathe. And we could sequester all the carbon dioxide of all the cars and factories put into the atmosphere. We could sequester a huge, much more bigger amount into the soil just to using those practices in agriculture, because that's the biggest area we are using of our land. So you're using mulching and you're using berry plants in between. So the farmer going to not have just the annual crop like tomatoes or corn to harvest. The farmer has, in addition, the possibility to harvest nuts and fruits and market much more things. So the farmer going to become more resilient for crisis. If there's a disease on the tomatoes, okay, we skip on tomatoes this year and do another crop, and we can still rely on our fruits and nuts we're going to harvest and the berries in between. And you can do even animal grazing. I have that on the next slide. What you can see there is a food forest where the farmer is putting his goats or cows or chicken or in the sequence sheeps that graze through the food forest areas between the swales and the annual crops areas. And he doesn't need to feed them. He doesn't need to buy food, because the food, he's going to put the seed out in the grasses and the leguminosas and the dandelion, and all those plants are eaten by the goats, and he doesn't need to buy food for them, and they keep the weeds down. So you have another staggering of functions. You do one thing, put goats in there, and get multiple advantages out of it. They fertilize the ground, and they keep the weeds down, and you can profit from it and have advantage. Okay, that's really a main issue what I have when I listen to Mark Shepard, especially, is that food forestry can really save this planet. We should really introduce that and make it mandatory that each farmer has mandatory to plant trees on his land. So it's not only in the city areas or in the parks and residential areas. It has to be mainly in the agriculture, because they use the biggest space on this planet. So then I just want to talk really quickly about a practice I really like a lot, which was invented by Sepp Holzer. He's a permaculturist who started his farm in 1962 in the Austrian Alps, way up elevation. And what he did is he created those swales and managed the water along those swales. So he created on his land, he has about, I don't know, about 70 acres or more than 100 acres now. And he has like 70 ponds there. And the Hügelbeet is a beautiful area. It can be charged with biomass and provide fertilizer and moisture for those plants for 25 years. So the farmer don't need to buy any fertilizer. It's in the soil already, because it's carbon, and the fungus and the microbiology brings those carbons to the plants and fertilize them. And the last picture, you see the Hügelbeet I'm working on at my garden. It's about 4 feet high and about 8 to 10 feet wide. And this is charged with a lot of tree trunks and roots and leaves and even old books and clothing. Everything goes in there which can be broken down by the microbiology. It's another beautiful aspect you have here. You don't need to bend down when I just planted a few plants like rosemary and mint. If you want to harvest, you just bend over a little bit, but not all the way down. Don't need to go on your knees and harvest right there. So it's much more convenient to get to your harvest and to your crop. And another advantage is if you do it south and north, you have first thing on the east side, when the sun comes up, you have warmth there. So after cold nights, like temperature sensitive plants who like it warm, they get first ray of sun early in the morning, and then in the afternoon they are more on the cool side. So it's getting really baking hot on the western side where the sun is standing all afternoon. So you can create microclimates and diverse your crop on the left side and right side, east side, west side, and create wonderful results with it. And it's long term. It's for a lifetime almost. You can use this. It's a little bit more work in the beginning, but if it's when it's installed, you just reap of it and profit from it.